Hello, my name is Jason Beach, and in this screencast, I want to talk about the basics of GarageBand and how you can use GarageBand in your classroom. Now, GarageBand is only available on Macintosh computers, so if you have a PC at home, unfortunately, you cannot use GarageBand. But there is an alternative on the Windows side. The alternative that I think best fits and replicates what GarageBand actually accomplishes is Acid Music Studio from Sony. As you can see here, the price is $54, but it's well worth it. A lot of the things that we talk about in GarageBand are available, like the loops, how to trim, edit, all those things are the same. Now, Acid Music Studio and GarageBand are great programs to start editing audio. So let's go ahead and take a look at GarageBand. Now, GarageBand is the guitar on your dock, so if you click on that, that'll open up the GarageBand window. Once it's opened, your screen should look like mine, and you got a couple options here. Of course, you can learn to play, and GarageBand has built-in lessons from particular artists like Sting, etc., that teach you how to play. Now, those are pay. You have to pay to actually watch those. What we're going to look at is just creating our own project today and using the loops feature. And then the next video that I do, we'll talk about creating podcasts and enhanced podcasts using GarageBand. So let's go ahead and take a look at the basic features of GarageBand now. To create a new project, you simply click New Project and then choose Loops. You're going to be prompted to save your project first, so you can just go ahead and save it with a name that you're going to recognize, and make sure you save it to a location where you're familiar, whether it be your desktop or your GarageBand folder. The tempo is fine. You can leave those as default. When GarageBand opens, you can see here your interface. You've got the plus button, which we've talked about before in some other videos. The plus button is where you can actually go and add a new software instrument, real instrument, or electric guitar. Now, if you have a keyboard or any instrument that can plug in via USB, you can plug it directly into GarageBand and record from your instrument into the computer, which is a nice feature. You have the edit button, which allows you to actually look at the sound waves or the waveforms of audio, and you can actually go in and trim out words that you don't want. If you're doing a podcast, you can trim out a lot of the ums and the pops. Your loop browser is right here, and you access your loop browser by pressing the eyeball in this bottom right corner of the screen. If you click the eyeball, it'll close the little slide out window. Click it again and it'll open it up. Now, we've seen this before in some other videos, the eye circle. It gives you information about whatever you're looking at. So if you have a loop selected and you press the eye circle, it's going to give you information about that loop. So there you go. It actually takes you in. You can find out more. Okay. If you want to preview a loop, all you have to do is simply click on the loop. When you're finished, you can press reset and it takes you back to the beginning. Now, all of these loops are categorized. So if I want to pull up guitar loops, I press guitar, and then notice the rest of these have faded. Now I can select a melody and maybe fill or electric. And once I get to the end of the list, this is the list of guitar loops that are available. Now, if I want to use that loop, all I have to do is simply click and hold and then drag and drop here. And it's going to automatically drop that loop in this center gray spot. Now, here's the track and here's the loop. Now, you can actually start bringing several of the loops together to make a song. So if I go to orchestra, strings, and say ensemble, I can bring those over as well. Of course, brass. You can bring as many of these in as you want to. Now, the idea here is you want to stack your tracks and your loops, and you don't want your loops to reside on the same line as your track. For example, I don't want my blues harmonica to be on the strings. I want to keep those separate. And you can have as many tracks as you need when you're creating your song. Okay? Now, let's say, for example, I wanted my blues harmonica to be a little longer than what it is by default. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can actually select it and use the shortcut Command C to copy, or edit, copy, and move your playhead, which is this red line here, over, and paste, which is Command V or edit, paste. Now you can do this over and over and over again. So let's listen to the sample. Okay. Or another way of doing this is simply placing your cursor in the top corner of that loop until you get this symbol, then click and hold and drag that out. Now that's going to consistently loop that loop over and over and over again. So here we go. Now notice there wasn't a difference between this one and this one, because as long as the loops are butted up next to each other and there is no space between, it's going to play it through as if there was no space. So I can actually go in and trim each of these up. As long as they're staying next to each other, it's going to sound like it's one continuous loop. Now that comes in handy when you're working with music. For example, if you're wanting to take a bad word or a curse word out of a song, perhaps maybe you were selected by the principal to find music for the school dance, or come up with a song for your basketball players to practice to, and if they've given you music that has explicit lyrics in it, one way you can use GarageBand is to actually take those explicit lyrics out, and that's pretty simple to do. All you have to do is just find the explicit lyric and then trim it out and then butt them back together again. Alright? So to do that, to split and trim, what you want to do is you want to find your actual loop and then zoom in, okay, using the edit tool, and then press play button or the space bar to start. And this down here is a zoomed in version of what you're looking at up here. So this is going to move a little faster. This allows you to actually zoom in and see the actual waveforms. So if you were trying to remove an explicit lyric from a song, for example, let's pretend that this is an explicit lyric, we can take that out by placing the playhead down here, which moves it up here, and then going to edit, split, or using the shortcut Command T, and then dragging this slider to the right so you get to the end of that explicit lyric, which would be right there, and then do the exact same thing again, edit, split. We've actually split this loop into 3 different sections. Now they're all still selected because they're dark blue. What you want to do is then deselect everything by clicking in an open gray area and then select your explicit lyric. And let's get the playhead out of the way and then click that explicit lyric. And if you want to remove that, all you have to do is press the delete key. It's gone, and then back the loop up. So now as the song plays through, it won't say the explicit lyric anymore because it's no longer there. It'll stutter through it, much like music that you get from commercial retailers that are edited. They'll actually do this same steps. They'll actually go through and trim all the bad words out or the explicit lyrics out. Now this is a neat feature you can use GarageBand for, and it's just one of the many ways you can use GarageBand in your classroom. So this is how you work with the loops. You can also play with a couple other things. You have access to sound effects that you can work with. So if you needed to add some sound effects to a school play, or maybe a presentation or something like that, or a PowerPoint presentation, you can use these. And they're all built in to GarageBand. You also have jingles that work well with your podcast, and I'll talk about those more when I cover podcasting. So this is the basics of working with GarageBand. Now that we have somewhat of a song set up, I'm going to show you how to export it. Before we export it, I want to talk about the record button. If you want to record your audio, you can actually press this button here and it will record audio on a track that you set up and create. So right now I don't have a track set up, so I'm going to add a new track by going to Real Instruments. And it says down here at the bottom for audio recording such as voice, guitar, and bass. So I'm going to choose a new track. And then I can choose vocals and choose any type of effect that I want to add to my vocals. And I'll show you and talk to you more about this when we do podcasting. but this is where you actually want to record your voice. Now by default, the metronome is on, so you want to turn that off because you'll hear that in the background of your voice recording. So this is how you record your vocals. Down here is your heads up display. It gives you information about what you're recording and what you're working with. I like to change this symbol right here from notes to time. That way I can keep up with how long my podcast is or how long my song is. And this also changes the time strip up here at the top so you can more easily move through the song and you can recognize that maybe there was an explicit lyric 20 seconds in. I can remember that and then quickly jump to 20 seconds in by using the tape at the top to find that explicit lyric. Now that I have shown you the basics of GarageBand, I'm going to show you how to export a song. It's really easy to do. You just simply go to Share and then choose Export Song to Disk. And by default, it's set up to AAC. I've switched mine to MP3, and I encourage you to use MP3 as well because it's open and all audio players will play MP3. You don't have to worry about a CD player not being able to play it. And then of course in your audio settings you can go in and you can tweak or play around with that. I like to choose higher quality just because it gives your song a better sound. And then choose export and automatically export your song to your disc. And that's it. That's the basics of GarageBand.